Let's talk about one of the most powerful ways to completely supercharge your learning. This is all about shifting gears, from being a passive student to someone who's actively in the driver's seat of their own success.
Oh, we've all been there, right? You put in the hours, you read all the chapters, you've got highlighters in every color, but come test day, it feels like all that information just vanished. Well, that exact frustration is where we're going to start today.
You know, researchers like Barry Zimmerman noticed this common pattern. Let's call this the reactive learner. This is the person who waits for the teacher to tell them what to do. They don't really plan their study time, so of course they end up cramming. And when things get tough, what do they say? I'm just not a math person. It's a really passive and honestly a pretty frustrating way to go about learning anything.
But what if there's a totally different way to do it? See, the solution isn't about studying harder, it's about studying smarter. And that all starts by getting a little meta.
So first up, we have cognition. This is kind of the bread and butter of learning, right? It's the facts, the formulas, the concepts. It's all the stuff you're actually trying to learn. Think of it like all the tools you have in your toolbox.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The next level up is metacognition. And if cognition is the tools, well, metacognition is you being the craftsman. It's your ability to step back and ask yourself, which tool should I even use for this job? Is this tool actually working? How could I do this whole thing better? This, right here, is the secret sauce to effective learning.
And this is exactly what Barry Zimmerman was talking about. He described the complete opposite of the reactive learner as someone who's proactive. They don't just sit around and wait for learning to happen to them. No, they take charge. They know what they're good at, they know what they struggle with, and they actually have a plan to tackle it. This is what we call a self-regulated learner.
So you can see the difference here is just night and day. The reactive learner is basically a passenger on the learning journey. But the self-regulated learner, there's the pilot. They stop saying things like, I hope I do well on the test, and start setting specific goals, like, I'm going to master 3 types of equations by Wednesday. And they don't blame failure on just not being smart enough. They look at their strategy and figure out how to adapt.
So how do you actually become the pilot? It's really not as complicated as it might sound. In fact, research from the Education Endowment Foundation boils it down to a super simple, repeatable cycle.
It's just 3 steps: plan, monitor, and evaluate. The easiest way to think about it is what you do before, what you do during, and what you do after any learning task. This little cycle transforms learning from a one-shot deal into a continuous loop of improvement.
So, before you even crack open a book, you plan. And this is way more than just scheduling time in your calendar. It's about getting your brain in gear. Ask yourself, okay, what am I actually trying to accomplish here? What do I already know about this? And based on what worked or didn't work last time, what's my game plan? Then, while you're right in the middle of it, you monitor. This is like your in-flight check. And you gotta be honest with yourself here. Is reading this chapter for the 3rd time actually helping, or am I just spinning my wheels? Do I need to change things up and try a different approach? And finally, after you're done, you evaluate. This is the debrief. How did I actually do compared to the goal I set? What parts of my strategy worked really well, what didn't, and what's the one thing I'm going to do differently next time? This step is what turns one single experience into fuel for all your future learning.
All right, so this all sounds great in theory, doesn't it? It makes a lot of sense. But does this whole plan, monitor, evaluate cycle actually make a real difference out there in the real world?
Let's ask the most important question of all. Is there any hard evidence to back all this up? Get ready for this, because the impact is kind of staggering. The Education Endowment Foundation dug through over 300 studies on this, and what they found was that teaching students these metacognitive strategies led to an average of 8 extra months of academic progress in a single year. That's not a small bump, that is a massive leap forward. And you know what's really cool? This isn't just for one type of student. The positive effect is strong across the board, from little kids in primary school all the way through secondary school. It gives a boost in everything from math to literacy, and, this is really important, it's especially effective for disadvantaged students, which means it's a powerful tool for closing achievement gaps. So, the evidence is pretty clear. The question now becomes, how do we actually put this into practice effectively without falling into some of the common traps? And this is a really crucial reality check. This stuff isn't a magic bullet. You can't just teach thinking skills in a class on its own and expect it to work. It has to be taught as part of an actual subject. I mean, learning how to plan an essay in history is way different from planning how to solve a physics problem. Also, you have to get the challenge level right. If the task is so hard that a student is just completely overwhelmed, their brain won't have any room for metacognition. It has to be challenging, but not impossible.
So what does a good strategy even look like? Well, this awesome summary from a huge study by Dunlofsky and his colleagues lays it all out. So many of us spend our time on those low-utility techniques like rereading our notes or highlighting half the textbook. But the research is crystal clear. The biggest bang for your buck comes from active strategies like practice testing yourself and spacing out your study sessions over time.
Ultimately, it really all comes down to this single question. Learning isn't something that just happens to you. By planning, monitoring, and evaluating, you get to take the controls. So the question I want to leave you with is this. Are you going to be a passenger, or are you ready to become the pilot of your own learning journey?